To the East Coast, Rivers could be a candidate to take over as the Knicks head coach if New York and Jeff Hornacek part ways. That, according to Mark Berman of the New York Post. Both Rivers and Hornacek have 1 year remaining on their contracts beyond the 2017-2018 campaign. Per Berman, the Knicks would likely have to part with a draft pick to acquire Rivers, though. Stephen A., your city, your team, you like Doc there? Is he a good fit?
No, I do not. I don't like Doc there. I like Doc Rivers almost anywhere else but not in New York because I don't believe that he would coexist with Steve Mills and Scott Perry's. Doc Rivers is used to running his own ship, not used to just being the coach answerable the folks above him who may not know as much basketball as him. I'm not saying that Steve Mills and Scott Perry don't know basketball because, my God, they know their basketball. But Doc Rivers has been around for a long time as a player, as a coach, as an executive, and he's been stellar at least one of those jobs, which is that of a coach. And so I think that coming to New York, having to deal with Dolan and what have you, the city of New York and all that comes with it, I don't think that that would be the right fit. I've been on the record, and I've stated this on many occasions, and I'll state it again. Mark Jackson should be the next head coach of the New York Knicks. Jeff Hornacek, God bless him, is a good basketball coach, knows basketball. He was never the right fit for New York. I think he should go back to Phoenix or somewhere else. Mark Jackson should be the coach of the New York Knicks. Queens native. O'Connell Park was where he played. St. John's was where he starred before becoming Rookie of the Year with the New York Knicks. In Golden State, they improved the 3 years that he was there at the helm as the head coach, and everybody and their grandmother knows that he set the stage and helped build the foundation that Steve Kerr has been able to take to another level and really flourish, leading the Golden State Warriors to championship caliber status. But this is the biggest reason, Max, why I continuously say Mark Jackson over and over and over again. As you have proclaimed, Max, James Dolan is just crazy. It's an absolute joke how he's presided over the New York Knicks franchise. Phil Jackson was supposed to be the guy that led New York to better pastures. What happens? Phil Jackson would speak in September, disappear until April, leave a player like Carmelo Anthony hanging to be the voice of the New York Knicks to New Yorkers every night, night in, night out. That's the job of the coach. And so when you have that in terms of galvanizing New York City to rally behind you, but more importantly, to give you the benefit of the doubt, to have somebody to believe in that when they speak and they say we're moving in a forward direction, you trust him, not just because he's a damn good coach, in the case of a Doc Rivers, for example, but because he's one of you. That New York is a special situation. It's not just about basketball coaching, because if it's just about basketball coaching, I'm picking Doc Rivers too, because his resume is deeper and a champion. It's not about that. In New York City, it's been so bad and the waters have been so sullied that you don't need just a basketball coach. You need so much more than that. And you need somebody to get New Yorkers to trust them and hand them the benefit of the doubt. So when they say we're moving forward, you can actually believe them. Mark Jackson is that man. I'd throw Mike Woodson into the mix if it wasn't for how things ended this last season. I still think he deserves to be a head coach in the NBA too. But for the purposes of New York, I think Mark Jackson is the man that should be the head coach. Hornacek should be gone. The season ends April 11th. He should be gone by April 12th. And before tax season ends, by April 15th, Mark Jackson should be the next head coach for the New York Knicks. And I have told the New York Knicks this on many occasions.
I hate the idea of Doc Rivers as the Knicks head coach. I also don't like the idea of Mark Jackson as the next Knicks head coach. First, let me start by saying, you hit the nail on the head with Jim Dolan. Long as Jim Dolan's there, Red Auerbach could be the next coach, and you could have Michael Jordan. You know what I can guarantee you right now? They ain't going to win a championship because Dolan will figure a way to screw it up. So that's number one. You're dealing with a rotten foundation with Dolan as the owner. That's one. Two, the idea that the Knicks would want Doc Rivers as coach goes to that point. Dolan is just trying to get some positive press for his team to keep the suckers in this town where I sit right now, where I was born and raised, where I'm raising my family, to keep buying tickets and paying that cable bill. I mean, the New York Knicks fan base, we're suckers. We pay for it's like Cowboys fans. We pay for losing all the time. And as long as Dolan keeps the back pages fed, his hope is that'll continue. Look, The fact that the Knicks would trade a draft pick, or even think about it, for the wrong coach, for the wrong team at the wrong time, shows you how dysfunctional this organization is. Doc Rivers is the kind of coach you bring in when you're ready to go over the top. If you have veteran players, not when you're building a young team that's not ready to win yet, where young players who are still developing need minutes, not just veterans you trust, not when you're building a team built around the two most important positions, European players. You go get someone off the Popovich coaching tree who understands that style of basketball, who's willing to give minutes to young players and play in a European style, which, by the way, is where Porzingis is from and Frank Ntilikina's from. You got your big and your point guard, both European players, both young, both developing. You don't bring in a coach who's like, we need to win now with veterans. That's Doc Rivers. And you're going to trade a draft pick for him? How stupid is the owner of this team if he's contemplating that? Well, we know the answer to that. 2, Mark Jackson. I like the way you're thinking, Stephen A., because Mark Jackson is exactly who you bring in when you want to instill confidence in a young team. Get them to come together and almost have a paranoia about it's them against the world. You ever read Phil Jackson's book, 11 Rings?
Yeah, I did.
He talks about the various stages of team building. But what I've seen from Mark Jackson so far is he can, the 5 stages. He gets you to about stage 3. So far. It doesn't mean he can't get past that, but so far that's what he's shown. And then at the helm of the Golden State Warriors, their full offensive potential was not unlocked because they moved the ball less than any team in the NBA. They brought Steve Kerr in, really a Popovich tree hire, and suddenly the offense exploded. Mark Jackson certainly instilled confidence and helped with the development of Klay Thompson and obviously Steph Curry and got these guys to believe in themselves and each other and look at as though it's them against the world. But he could not get them to the next phase where they truly became a great team. Not saying he can't ever do that,
Max,
but so far what you have in Mark Jackson
guys,
and Doc
let
Rivers
me get in
is
here
like
really
combined the coach you
really
need.
quick, because
That's
Stephen A., I want to hear thoughts on this. I want to throw a name out to you who did a really impressive job at Memphis. How about David Fizdale?
I like David Fizdale, but I think David Fizdale's the man for the Los Angeles Lakers job in the event that Magic Johnson gets rid of Luke Walton. And I'm not ruling out the possibility that he'll get rid of Luke Walton. When LeVar Ball came and spoke out against Luke Walton, it did not escape me that Magic Johnson, it took him 4 days before he responded to LeVar Ball throwing Luke Walton under the bus the way that he did. That tells me that Magic Johnson remembered that he's not the one that hired Luke Walton. That was a Jim Buss and Jeannie Buss hire. He's the president of basketball operations now, and I think if Magic had his druthers, it would be Fizdale. And I'm here to tell you right now, Fizdale would take that job in a heartbeat. He's not lobbying or politicking for it, but he would take that job in a heartbeat. Back to the New York Knicks, Mark Jackson specifically. Max, I completely and emphatically disagree with you with what you said about Mark Jackson and what he couldn't do. The job wasn't finished. He was in his 3rd year. These coaches are getting 5-year contracts for a reason. He went from like 23 wins to 47 wins to 51 wins. An argument could be made they were on their way and he would have done the job. Not to take anything away from Steve Kerr because he's fantastic. But we don't know what Mark Jackson would have done. We know they were getting to that point, and Mark Jackson was the one that forbid them to trade Klay Thompson when they wanted to move him for Kevin Love. Everybody forgets that. But it was Mark Jackson that stepped in and said, hell no, that's not what we're doing. And he also wanted Iguodala, and it's not an accident that that has worked for them either. And he also wanted Draymond Green, too. That's why Draymond Green got picked up. Let's not act like Mark Jackson didn't know what he was doing and didn't have something to do with the level of success. Steve Kerr deserves all the credit in the world. And the Warriors did the right thing.
I'm
but
certainly
Mark
not
Jackson
arguing. I'm not taking
deserves
credit away
too.
from Mark Jackson.
All right.
If anything, I gave Mark Jackson credit for it and said it's still an open question as to whether he can take them to the next level.
Go, guys.
But he didn't do it in the time he was there, and the offense
3
was
years.
stagnant.
Gentlemen, sorry to cut you off, but
true.
we know the Knicks can't mess this one up. We'll continue clearly to track this story. It's personal on this show. Still to come, new Rams DB Marcus Peters had some interesting comments on choosing when and when not to tackle, and Stephen A. is not going to let him slide. Plus, up next, Adam Silver tries to solve the NBA's tanking problem with a memo to all teams. We'll talk about it next. Don't go anywhere.